Mimecast has released its State of Ransomware Readiness report for 2022, finding that most cybersecurity leaders experience the same or increasing numbers of ransomware attacks over last year. Together with Mimecast, organizations can stand strong in the face of cyber attacks, human error, technical failure, and work protected. Mimecast, work protected. Visit securityweekly.com/Mimecast to learn more. Managing and protecting the world's grueling number of endpoints, enabling Tanium's customers to see, control, and protect every endpoint everywhere. Tanium's mission is to provide certainty in uncertain times with the industry's only converged endpoint management, trusted by the U.S. military and the majority of the Fortune 100. Today, Tanium helps manage and protect nearly 30 million endpoints. Tanium, the power of certainty. Visit securityweekly.com/Tanium to learn more. Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Jason Albuquerque. Don't miss any of your favorite Security Weekly content. Visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to any of our podcast feeds and have all new episodes downloaded right to your phone. You can also join our mailing list, Discord server, and follow us on social media and our streaming platforms. All right, Jason, you and I get the articles this week, buddy.
Yeah.
All right. So,
I love it.
First up, reading this first article, I'm like, all right, somebody did a survey and they're trying to tweak it to their results. And I think there's parts of this that are true, right? That CISOs plan to invest in automation. I'm just not sure the bullets that they pulled out are what they're trying to automate. The article I think is right, but I'm not sure that the details of the article are exactly what people are investing in.
Yeah, I know. I started reading it, and then it said, download the infographic and the report, and I realized really quick that it was a vendor who actually does continuous compromise assessments and leverages automation and orchestration as part of their tool. So I said, all right, it's definitely going to be something that's geared toward them. But you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, CISOs are looking for automation and orchestration to get the noise away from our staff, right? Yeah. How can it have a positive impact on my staff, get some of those run tasks off the table so the existing teams can focus on the growth and transformation of our business unit, right? And making sure we're strategically focused, right? And get maybe some of that reactiveness off the table. The bullet points are what they are. They only interviewed 213 executives, right?
Right.
So, I mean, very, very small take rate there as far as data is concerned. But yeah, I mean, when you look at the brunt of it, we're trying to automate the run and get the run off the table, right?
Yeah.
So our team can focus on the important aspects of the business.
Yeah, the things I hear the most right now are two major themes, and automation ties into one of them for sure. One is the consolidation story, which we've talked about a lot. Yep. The second was the efficiency story, right? And this is where automation and investment in automation can help. How can I reduce noise to the SOC? How can I get rid of false positive? What kind of things can we do with automation technologies to make my team more efficient, right? That is a play. I'm not sure that it's around one topic or another. It's just in general, right? It's all about optimization of the resources you have and where can you leverage automation, orchestration, et cetera, to get better utilization of your resources. That's the play. I'm just not sure that it's related to threat detection response or on-prem versus cloud. It's just in general doing
automated threat hunting, right? I mean,
right.
At the end of it, the tools are going to augment the staff, not replace staff, right?
Right.
So ultimately, I don't want someone to read this article to think, we're going to buy these bells and whistles and blinky lights and tools, and all of a sudden, we don't need that IT security staff. We don't need a cybersecurity team, or we can lay folks off. No, that's not it. We need the people.
Yeah.
We need the people badly. We're going to go in as leaders and buy tools that are going to help augment our teams. So they're going to help support our teams to be bigger and better and focus on more strategic.
We talked about this a little bit on the previous segment with Drew, which is lots of tools, but bringing all that data together not only helps give you visibility, it also gives you the ability to be more efficient and more optimized as you bring those data sources together, right? And so part of this was like, yeah, we do need to integrate this data and understand it better so I can make better decisions off of it, which is part of the automation, the efficiency story. It's just not the only part of the story,
That's
though.
right.
Yeah.
100%.
Yep. Next story. What CISOs should know about hacking in 2023. Now, I brought this in because I don't know how much you think about this. I don't really think about some of this in my day-to-day job. Like, what's the latest threats and what are the latest hacking techniques? But it's probably good to know where some of the techniques are right now so that you can be in a better position to defend your organization. So I'm like, well, this is kind of an interesting twist to think about hacking and what CISOs need to know about hacking so that you can actually make sure you've got the right defenses in place to protect against some of these techniques.
Right. I mean, I have the luxury and the benefit. I have an offensive security team, right? So that offensive security team is constantly talking about the latest, greatest exploits and attack methods, and having those conversations with our customers. And part of it is doing those type of assessments. If you don't have a team internally, you have a third party come in and do those assessments so they can, teach you about the latest, greatest exploits and threats. Some of this is it's things that I'm having conversations with customers and having talks on a lot, to be honest with you, right? Because in many instances, when you're speaking to a CFO or a CEO or a COO, they don't realize that there are criminal syndicates out there, right? That lower barrier to entry that they talk about. Yeah, there are people out there selling access to your environment. There are folks out there selling ransomware, and that's all they do is sell the malware, right? There are folks out there that all they do is the money laundering aspect of it, right? It's they don't realize that there's actual criminal syndicates out there working together like a business, right? Trying to make money. So there's a low barrier entry, and you see eyes open wide when you start having those conversations because they don't realize that. So these are great conversations to have, with other executives to teach them about what the environment of running a business is today when it comes to cyber threats and what type of attacks could happen.
Yeah. Now, on the techniques, kind of the top 4 techniques, obviously phishing's still working. I mean, it works. Like, it's so simple, but it works. Is that still the top threat? Do you see is phishing right now?
The human factor is always the top threat. Yeah. It really is, and we talk about this all the time. Order is key for me, right? So phishing's in the top, that top spot. But close behind it is vulnerability. I call it vulnerability missing patches.
Right.
I'm going to add misconfiguration to that, right? Yep. That's one that wasn't in here. So vulnerability missing patches, misconfiguration. Drop that into number 2. Fighting really hard for number 1. So that's that. And then, obviously ransomware attack as of the last few years has been high on that level. DDoS, I mean, it happens, but there's a lot of protections out there for that these days.
Yeah, I was worried. I was interested in DDoS, right? Because I haven't seen as many DDoS attacks, right? I see phishing. Obviously, the vulnerability, misconfiguration stuff, and ransomware is still pretty high on the list. I just didn't know how relevant DDoS attacks still were. I know there's a lot of bot issues, right? Sure. And so I don't know if you consider bots part of DDoS or if that's a completely different attack vector.
Yeah, well, I mean, in many instances, the bots are trying to disrupt, the service that you're providing. So it could be a DDoS attack that's based from a bot attack. I see it, but what I do see is a lot of mitigation factors taking care of it. I mean, if you have your servers up in Azure, you have Azure Front Door, you have web application firewalls that can take care of that, right?
Right.
And help mitigate that.
Right.
So,
especially. Go ahead.
But I was going to say the article goes into, not only the hacking methods, but the most popular defense, right? Mm-hmm. And it's funny. They have automation and AI at the top, then secure your cloud assets, then make cybersecurity a priority. What I didn't see in that list, Matt, is the say easy, do hard stuff.
Yeah.
Train your people, know your assets, patch your stuff. Phishing is in the top hacking method. Vulnerability missing patches is up there as well.
Right.
They don't talk about training your people. They don't talk about patch your stuff. What?
Right. Well, and we just talked about the challenges around training and the effectiveness of training, right? And so here we have the top risk is a human risk element, and yet There's no
Right.
human related stuff.
Right.
It's all about the technology. And if
Right.
the technology solved all this, we would have been done years ago in
I wouldn't
cybersecurity.
have a
We got
job.
enough technology. There's
We wouldn't have jobs right now, Matt.
Yeah, there's like 4,000 cybersecurity companies. If technology were enough
That's
people,
right.
we would be done.
I know. I looked at it and I said, I want to replace all three of those most popular defenses with train your people, know your assets, patch your stuff.
Yep. Yeah.
Right? Like trade all three of those out.
Right.
But it's the say easy, do hard. It's the non-technology, non-blinky light, sexy stuff. It's the hard stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's really fun to go chase the blinky light, but it's much harder to train your people.
That's right.
For sure. Yeah. All right. Now we get into some leadership articles, and as I think through what's going on right now, there's some really great articles coming out around leadership and organizational change and empathy. We're going to talk empathy in a little bit.
Yep.
I mean, I just sit back and we did the security money segment last week, and you see what's happening in the industry. You see the news that continues to come out. A lot of change. And so as an organization, like, what do you need to do to prepare for some of these changes? So this first article is really around change management and getting employee buy-in for organizational change.
Yep.
Now, caveat, you can't always get employee buy-in for certain changes. You can to an extent, but it's really hard in certain situations to do that. But if you're going to get employee buy-in, like, what are the things you should really focus on to make sure you're doing it well? Because what you don't want to do is solicit feedback and then not listen to the feedback and not listen to it and do something else.
No, exactly. And that's an important piece of it too, right? Because there was one section in here that said you need to have ownership, right? As part of that strategy for getting buy-in for change. Well, that means taking input, right? And really allowing folks to give you input. Input after a decision is already made is not input. It's feedback or criticism.
Yeah.
Think about that, right? It's not input because the decision was made, the change already happened, and now you're asking for feedback, right? It's not input. Allow employees to have skin in the game and to give input, not feedback or criticism.
Yep. Yeah. And
So
I think
that's a big piece.
it is. And I think things that are strategic and business drivers are easier than others that are reorganizational structures or, other those types of changes that are a little more impactful to the employee base.
But that's when authenticity takes, control, honestly, because I don't know how many times I've had conversations with staff members and saying, you want to know what? I understand that you don't agree with this business decision. I get it. It's going to be hard. It's going to make things harder for a little while. But this is why we're doing it. This is the outcome we're looking to achieve as a business. And this is the direction we're heading. We have to be rowing in the same direction to make our business unit and this company successful. So we have to get on board with this. I know it's going to be painful. I know it's going to suck. And I know you don't agree with it. But let's get through this together. And I'm always here to help you get through it, right?
Yep.
That's where you're walking the walk.
Yeah.
Instead of talking talk, you're walking the walk. Because honestly, it's your actions that matter. And it's identifying the fact that you may not get complete buy-in, but at least you'll get the team rowing the boat in the same direction.
Right. Which ties into not the next article, the one after that, which is empathy at the team level, which we'll get to in a second. The second leadership article I pulled in here was all around mastering, time management. Because I think I know for me right now, that's one of the big ones, right? There's just so many things going on. It's how do you stay focused and mastering your time on a day-to-day basis, right? And this article breaks it down into this great way to think about prioritization, delegation, and your daily routines. Like it's a constant reprioritization, delegate where you can, and getting into a standard set of routines to make you as efficient as possible. And it's hard sometimes to do that, but if you're doing them well, you're going to manage your time better.
This is a place where you can make or break your leadership role, right? Because ultimately, this is success for a leader, is to be able to master these things, because we're all running 1,000 miles an hour, right? Mm-hmm. And if we're not prioritizing things that are happening and communicating effectively with, our staff and our peers and our colleagues, the trust factor in what we can achieve will be eroded, right? Because you'll start dropping the ball. You'll start forgetting to do things. You'll forget promises that you've made. And that's where the trust factor starts to erode. And that will kill you as a leader. That will completely take you out at the knees as a leader. So being able to prioritize, and I'll put communicate in there as well, because when you're prioritizing and reprioritizing, because this is something I do on the daily. On the daily, I'm looking at my priorities and seeing where I need to focus for the day, right? If you're not communicating any shift in priority to the stakeholders who are attached to that, to that task that you need to achieve, you're not communicating to them, they're going to think you forgot about them.
Yeah.
They're not going to know that the game changed or the rule changed, right? That you're pushing things out or moving things forward. So communication with that prioritization is key. And then delegation, listen, leave your ego at the door. You hire good people for a reason, right? Have them help the cause. I love divide and conquer. I've been using divide and conquer for 15 years, right? The term divide and conquer. I say it to folks all the time. Hey, listen, let's divide and conquer on this one. You get this, I'll get that. All right, let's go, right? And that's how you get the tasks to be completed and completed effectively. Because if you as a leader are trying to focus on 15 things, you're not going to do any of them well.
Right.
Right? The more you spread your focus, the less quality you're going to have. So you have to start dividing and conquering, leave your ego at the door. And then the routines, like hold your calendar sacred. I hold that. Everything is in my calendar. I live off my calendar. I breathe off of my calendar. I put reminders in my calendar so I remember to ping someone on Teams, right? Like literally, don't forget to communicate to this person about something I reprioritize.
Right.
Like I'm reminding myself of all those things, but you have to safeguard that calendar.
Yeah.
Hold it sacred.
Well, I'm like you. I live and die by my calendar. But there's a few things I do that we do. Some of them are mine and some of them are the orgs. Like every Monday, the executive management team identifies their top 3 priorities for the week. Every Monday morning, every executive, top 3. These are the top 3 things I'm working on this week, right? It's a task every Monday. And it's there for us to remind ourselves, like this week, these are the 3 most important things I need to get done, right? That happens Monday mornings, which then flows into typically our executive management call later on Mondays or on Tuesdays. Wednesday, it's my one-on-ones, right? Those are set meetings with my staff to go through each of the individual team members, like any shift in priorities, any changes. Like that routine is locked every week. It's top 3 for the week, my one-on-ones, that all flows into the week. And so that routine helps keep me in sync and my team in sync with what things should we be working on that week. And then it is delegation, right? For me, it's my product managers to step up and take over certain things and really become kind of like the CEOs of their own product domains, right? I want them to have ownership in making decisions, prioritizing the right requirements. I'm giving strategic oversight, but I can't build every single requirement across all the products. They need to own those pieces, which means I have to delegate them the responsibility to do it.
Yeah. And honestly, those routines that you build, whether they're daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, the other side of it too is it builds accountability, because here's the thing. On your Monday list of the top 3 priorities that you have that week, you don't want to get to that next leadership meeting and say, I didn't do 2 out of the 3.
Right.
So, having that is a level of accountability. I have cadence with different leaders within my organization, and we talk about, all right, here are the things we need to accomplish by the time we meet next.
Right.
Right. So we're setting those small wins over the course of a week or 2 weeks if I'm meeting with them every other week. Yeah. We're setting those small wins. And then the first thing we do is report out on what we accomplished.
Yeah. So we do
then we talk about
right. So we do the same thing on Fridays with our check-ins, right? All the execs check in. This is what I got done this week. This is what's going to next week. Right. My staff has OKRs they're responsible for. What's the weekly check-in? Are we on track for our quarterly OKRs? Right. We do that through 15.5 internally, but it is a way, Jason, to your point, making sure we're prioritizing the right stuff, tracking where we are, measuring those quarterly objectives. Are we hitting those? Because if we're not, then something's not working right, and we better make the adjustments if we're going to deliver on our objectives for the quarter.
But that's how you're getting insight into your lead measures instead of lag measures. Do you want to know you're failing after you failed, or do you want to know that you're going off the road before you go off the road, right?
Yeah.
So you can actually change course and get back on the road, right? So you're doing it in a fashion where now you can get lead indicators to say, we're starting to veer a little bit, right? Let's get back on track.
Right.
How do we get back on track?
Or we're slowing down. We're not going to get there on time, so we got to speed it back up. Yeah.
That's right.
Next article. Practice empathy as a team. This article, I was like, I should do
it was interesting.
way more. I should do more of this, though. Like, so we did this a couple weeks ago. It was National Compliment Day or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was funny. We have a random channel, and people were just complimenting people, just random, right? And I was like, but why do it once a year? Like, we could do this on a regular basis, and we try to encourage it as part of these shout outs in the weekly check-ins. If somebody did a great job, you kind of do a shout out, and I think they call it a high five in 15.5, but to acknowledge the person like on a weekly basis or whenever. And I was like, well, that's a great way to think about it, but I've never really brought some of those exercises into like the team meeting, because not only do I have my one-on-ones, Jason, I also have my team meeting once a week. Like, bringing some of these into that could actually help the team, I think, as a whole, be a little more empathetic to each other, because I just use that as a status update so everybody knows what everybody else is working on, but it's not accomplishing what this article talks about. I'm like, oh, I should bring some of these into my team meetings.
Right. So I started reading this article, and I got through like the first 3, and I said, oh my Lord, I'm reading an article about like team building exercises that we need to be doing, like when they take you out into the woods and you like go balance on a, and I'm like, oh, this is not going the right way. And then I get to 4 and to 5 and 6, and I'm like, all right, this is getting a little bit better, right? It just seemed a little bit too kumbaya in the beginning for me.
Yeah.
But then I get to the end and I said, listen, there's a balance with these 10.
Yeah.
If you're embedding these things organically into the culture of your team, it will be successful. If any of these look manufactured or feel manufactured, it's going to fail miserably, right? Miserably. Because it is a little over the top, right? When you get into like appreciation round and have everybody go round robin and say, what I appreciate about Matt is that's manufactured, right? Mm-hmm. That's completely manufactured. I see that failing and people rolling their eyes when they leave the room. But if you can build these things organically into the culture, cool.
Right. And I think that's the interesting part is, as a leader, if you're creating a very transparent, open, embracive culture, right, then these things would naturally happen in different sessions, right? And so I think it behooves us as leaders to encourage some of this so that it is not just one-offs. It's something that people can do all the time. And I think some of the team has done that kind of more organically instead of being prompted to do it, which I think is a better way to do it for sure. But
100%,
it makes me think,
you just don't want to manufacture.
Right. But it makes me think about these things like, as a leader, how can I be more empathetic, and how can the team be that way? Because it's a conscious thing you have to think about. Not that I want it to be fake or false, but can we embrace some of that and be better as a team?
Of course.
Yeah.
And it starts with modeling the way. Right? I mean, at the end of the day, we as leaders need to model this every single day. And what ends up happening is now you start teaching these lessons organically to your directors. And then, directors who belong in the culture, who are on board with the culture you're building, will start passing that down. Yeah. And that's how it organically grows. But it starts with modeling the way.
Yes.
We as leaders need to do this organically, naturally, because we care about it.
Yeah. Last article. Listening is the most important communication skill. Yes.
Yeah. 100%.
Yes.
I pulled one sentence out of this and I absolutely loved it, and I'm going to use it all the time. Listen to understand, not to reply. It's not about you. Listen to understand. It's not about what comes back out of your mouth. It's not about your opinions. Sometimes you just need to sit back and listen and take it in and be there.
Right. And I think it was interesting because two pieces to this article. It talks about, because we're all online, we're doing Zoom chats. Like, are you really listening if you're multitasking? Because you're not, right? And we all try to multitask and maximize our time to get stuff done. But stop and think about, are you truly listening to what's going on? And I had a meeting this morning with one of my peers, and we were talking through some things we want to do process improvement wise around process. And there was like a 30-second delay where nothing was said because I'm literally writing down everything I just heard because I wanted to make sure I heard it and I had it written down so that we knew what to do with it, right? And sometimes you're in a conversation and you're not saying anything because you're literally processing and writing. And when I read this article, I was like, I was listening, right? And it wasn't about to respond. It was just to make sure I understand.
Sure, 100%. And honestly, I see no issue with that in a conversation. I mean, there are so many times where I'm having conversations with folks and I'm like, all right, hold on, give me 3 seconds. I want to make sure I take this down.
Right.
So I don't forget that I need to action this and I don't forget what you need, right?
Yeah.
So give me 5 seconds, write it down, and then I repeat it to make sure I understood it correctly.
And I do this on all kinds of calls, right? I'm constantly taking notes of things that I need to do something with. That's how all my action items and all my prioritization tasks, they're all in my notebook, right? They're sitting there and they're all highlighted. So I know, like, all right, when we get off this call, here's what I need to do next. Like, these are my actions. Otherwise, you know, I'm going to leave somebody out high and dry.
You got it. I'm the same way. I have a OneNote that's probably the last 15 years of my life. And it's the Albuquerque Library of Congress. It's massive at this point, but I take notes for everything.
Yeah.
And it's beneficial because now if someone has a question about 5 years ago, I can almost guarantee I have notes about it.
Yeah. Well, I know I do. They're just buried in composition notebooks. They're not in OneNote.
Listen, I still have my notes from BSW 101.
Nice.
Yeah, which we're going to have to celebrate when we get to 301.
I know. Yeah. We're getting there. I mean, we're close. 294. It's like 7 more. 7 more episodes. We'll get there.
Good to go.
Oh, Jason, thank you for joining me today. Always a pleasure. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, watching, and listening. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.